If you found yourself in love with Misha Green's Lovecraft Country like myself and Jordan Peele's Us, then you might like the style of them debuting this weekend on Amazon Prime Video. But does that style translate to a complete series, or is it something that misses the mark? I'll answer that and so much more in this spoiler-free review. Let's get started. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today I'm really excited to talk about Them, a brand new horror series on Amazon Prime Video that debuts this weekend. It's executively produced by Lena Waithe and directed and created and also written by little Marvin. Now, there are so many other directors on this project, but really this is little Marvin's project. This is his vision for a story that is incredibly tough to stomach. This is not going to be a very binge-worthy show just because the graphic material that it deals with. Now, a huge thank you to Amazon Studios for giving me the chance to screen this early. They gave me all 10 episodes, and each of them were about 30 to 45 minutes long, so I can tell you exactly what I thought of the entire series. Now, before we get into what worked with them and what really didn't work with this series, guys, if it's your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I review movies and TV shows early like this all the time, so you're not going to want to miss out. Go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell so you'll be the first one in the comments, guys. And speaking of the comments, let me know what you think of Them this weekend when you check it out, because you'll either love it or hate it after about 5 episodes, about midway through the season. But trust me, there are some moments that you should stick around for, and if you haven't already, smash that like button if you want to see more reviews just like this. Alrighty, guys, so let's get into the story and what Them is really about. Immediately, we're thrown into the lives of the Emorys, a black family that's relocating from North Carolina to an all-white neighborhood in Compton, California. When they step foot into their new home, they start to realize that it's not just white people that they're unfortunately going to have to deal with. There are other forces at play that are trying to break them, so the Emorys now have to figure out how to survive and fight back against these forces before it's too late. Now, the show definitely deals with a lot of the paranormal sense of things. Think Lovecraft Country, just without a lot of the nuance. Them does have some unique factors to it, though, that really make it worth watching in some moments. Now, not everything about the show again works, but there are some standout performances here, and that's where we're going to start. The acting here is really not the fault with this show. There are some amazing performances here, starting with our two leads. Ashley Thomas plays Henry Emery, husband to Deborah Ayorinde's character, Lucky Emery. You've seen Lucky on a ton of the promotional materials for this show, I'm sure, but I love both of them together. They have great chemistry, but individually, they're also incredibly strong actors. They give great performances here, and I love the fact that they're both fighting their own demons, so their subplots are really not very distracting, but they're just adding to the layer of the story. And then there's the standout for me, Shahadi Wright Joseph, who plays Ruby Emery, one of the two sisters in this show. She's very good at what she does here, and I know she doesn't get as much love and much screen time, but when she is given that spotlight, her solo moments are just extraordinary. She's incredibly compelling, and coincidentally, she did star in Jordan Peele's Us. Her sister Gracie Emery, played by Melody Hurd, is also pretty darn good in this show. She definitely has serviced a lot of the creepier moments earlier on, and one of the figures she sees, Miss Vera, is, well, it's pretty terrifying, I won't lie to you. But the thing is, her character alone is just one of the many reasons why this show's spookier moments really delivered for me. And then you have one of our many antagonists in this show, Allison Pill, who plays Betty Wendell. She is a wretched character. I do not like her at all. I think she is awful, vile, but Allison Pill does play this character very well. Her terrifying smiles, it all just creates a very creepy atmosphere, and it does speak to, again, the racism of the times. And unfortunately, what's so frustrating about series like this, we can see little glimpses of what black families had to deal with back in the day and what they have to deal with now. It's almost similar, and it sucks. And Allison Pill really just delivered on that note, even though I think the story tries to focus a little too much on her. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I still enjoyed her performance for what it's worth. And technically speaking, the show delivers a lot of different filmmaking techniques, which is both a blessing and a curse for the series. What I loved is that there were some episodes where you can see how unique each shot was framed. You had Dutch angles, you had split diopter lenses, you had the classic Jaws cinematography technique where the character is kind of sitting still, and as the camera moves away, it starts to zoom in. So you get this really cool effect in so many episodes, and it does brandish the series in a unique way. And I'm not telling you that it's a bad thing that we got all these filmmaking techniques, but it is a little too distracting sometimes, and that does dominate the acting on screen. In sticking with what the show does well technically, the score is absolutely chilling. Mark Corbin was the composer here on this project, and he worked on some movies that really haunted me, like The Lighthouse, The Witch, and all those films that have a very atmospheric feel to it. See, there are specific instruments that are really louder than the others sometimes, and it makes sense for the scenes. So I really will say that the score, the filmmaking techniques, and a lot of the performances really served them very well. And before we move on to what didn't work in this film, guys, I gotta tell you that this definitely dips into the bag of Jordan Peele's brand of filmmaking. At times it's even a carbon copy with what you've seen in Us, and I don't hate that, and I do like that, you know, they were taking some inspiration from other films and TV shows, but there were one too many moments where I started thinking of those movies instead of literally thinking of them. But still, I do like this new age of horror where it's more so a social commentary piece rather than just strictly sticking to jump scares and cheap thrills in order to get the story across. But that's where the negatives begin, because I don't think, guys, the story here in them is very strong. Unfortunately, for as strong as the writing and direction was in the first half of the season, the second half of the series is just dragging. The pacing is definitely not balanced, right? And I do think that there's way too much focus on different storylines that distract from the character development of our core cast of the Emorys. I have zero clue why the series decided to focus a lot on Alison Pill's character, and why we got a solo episode that was completely out of place towards the end. Without spoiling anything, I will say that maybe this show over-explains in one area, and I don't think it was very necessary. And oftentimes the series really is just going in circles. There are many moments where I'm taking notes and I'm thinking, boy, we're still stuck on this area of the plot. I thought we would maybe move forward, and then episodes end and you don't really get a lot of things resolved, or you don't feel like you're moving forward. This is a 10 episode series with episodes that do feel very long. So eventually when you get to episode 5 and 6, you think, okay, maybe we're going to get an advancement of the plot, but then you start to notice that there are other things that are wrong with this show that are also bogging it down, like the scares. Even though there were some awesome jump scares and some creepy moments of imagery, I don't think a lot of the horror worked here, and sometimes it was just shocking to be shocking. And I started to notice that in episode 5, where there's a trigger warning, there are actually a few episodes that have a trigger warning, but they're definitely justified. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to have an iron stomach for a lot of these scenes, and there's one that involves a minor, and it did not work for me at all. If anything, I was more disgusted by the fact that they would even spend so much time showing what happened in that scene, rather than actually moving it along and just saying it. That's where I think you can just talk about it, where expository dialogue is probably fine. It's horrifying enough to think about what happens, but when you see it, maybe it's a little much. And then as we got closer to that final act, I really just was exhausted. And that's not to say that the show's intention wasn't to exhaust the viewer, because maybe it is. Maybe it's trying to really put you in the shoes of the Emorys. And I will tell you that there were moments here where I thought, okay, I see what the story's trying to do, and the writing here is clever, but for the most part, Them is not a series that held my intrigue all the way through. Instead, I was left thinking, man, the story is wasting these performances. I really do feel like there was a disservice done to a lot of these actors and actresses, because they give good performances. The only thing is, that's not enough to sustain this ship. Instead, I really do feel like maybe they needed to shorten this season. It probably could have been even better if the episodes were sticking in that 30 to 35 minute range, because there were so many times where I just felt maybe there's a lot of fat that could have been trimmed off of these episodes, and it would have made for a tighter series. But that's not what we got here. And then there were a lot of moments towards the end that I just felt were anticlimactic. There's a big reveal that didn't work for me, and then the editing was a little weak, honestly. To me, it just felt like there were so many moments where the story just kept going in circles, and when it started to eventually break out, it almost felt too little too late. So overall, you guys, Them is a show that has a lot of promise, especially with the first 3 episodes. I was pretty locked in, I won't lie to you. I was questioning maybe where the story could go, but again, it was holding my intrigue. It's just unfortunate that as we get closer to the midway point and then that second half, the show just does not work for me. The scarier moments really aren't as scary anymore by that point, and I think a lot of the performances here are definitely wasted because of the story not being as tight and honestly not as compelling. And I understand that this new wave of horror is less on the horror side and more on the social commentary side, which I love, but when you see what Jordan Peele's putting out, when you see what Misha Green developed with Lovecraft Country, they both did it right, and I think there's a formula there that definitely works. But with them, it doesn't really do anything that we haven't seen before in some instances, and I think for the most part, this show drops the ball in some key moments. Now, is this show something you should skip this weekend? I wouldn't say you should write it off completely. Maybe give it a few episodes, and if you're locked in, okay, but if by then you don't feel in love with this series enough to stay with another 7 episodes, it might not be for you. The thing is, guys, it's 10 episodes long, it's going to be an investment of your time, and it's not easily binge worthy. I don't think that you're gonna sit there and say, oh, I'm enjoying this. That's not the actual intention of the show. It's meant to really kind of get you out of your comfort zone, and honestly, it's going to be triggering for a lot of people. So again, if you're not comfortable with what you're seeing after 3 episodes, it doesn't change. If anything, it gets worse. So even though Them has some good technical aspects to it, some solid performances, and I think that some of the spooks worked, it's not overall an experience that worked for me. And really, it comes down to the direction, the writing, and the story overall. So guys, Them is definitely on the lower rung of shows that I've seen this year, and I really wanted to like it because I thought the trailers looked great, but Them didn't really deliver for me. Now guys, let me know if you watch it this weekend, and if you do, what do you think of the series down below in the comments, and smash that big red button below and subscribe to the channel, guys, and tap on that bell so you don't miss out on reviews and reactions we got coming over the next few weeks. Alrighty y'all, well, I'm gonna now go back and watch Jordan Peele's Us, and I'm probably still going to be terrified in some moments. Yeah, that movie's great. Alrighty y'all, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.